like to welcome you to our Healthcare Leadership Excellence podcast episode of today. We always have great guests, and today is no exception. This guest and I connected over a common book that we both love, and it's the book Endurance about Ernest Shackleton's incredible voyage over 100 years ago. If any of you have not read Endurance and you think you're a leader, you need to read this book. So we started talking about this book, and the person we have talking to us today, I love guests like this because they have led at the highest levels. Chief Human Resources Officer for a $9 billion company, 83,000 employees. As he said in our pre-interview, he's been pivoting like Shackleton did, because Shackleton, he was going to cross the Antarctica, but then ice trapped his boat, and instead of being a famous explorer, he now was trying to survive along with about 24 men. So our guest today, Ernesto Gomez, comes to us from Monterrey, Mexico, and he has led all over the Americas. And I would like to welcome you, Ernesto, to our podcast today.
Thank you, Carl. I'm so excited to be with you. Our last conversation was fantastic, and I really look forward to this one as well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. As our listeners should also, this is going to be a treat. Just give us a brief thumbnail of, please summarize 4 decades of professional career in a couple of minutes here for me, Ernesto.
I don't know. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur myself. I started probably around, 10, 12 businesses in both Mexico and the US. And then for reasons that I do not still fathom, I was asked to join a big corporation. And I spent 23 years in that organization, which is a leader here in Mexico and in many other regions in the world. And I used to manage businesses myself for a long time. But for the last 10 years, I was asked to work in the HR area. One of the reasons is that I was very critical about the HR services that I received. And the CEO told me, well, I mean, you seem to be really, unsatisfied and critical. Let's see if you can do a better job, running this department. And
Hey,
I accepted, and a new avenue opened in front of me, which is fantastic. And I retired last year, and now I look forward to continue. I just changed venues, but I would like to still help individuals and organizations to unlock their potential. That's what I do, and that's at I hope I will be working on this for many more years.
as our listeners are going to wish us as they hear our interview today, I walked away with that same, what a library, an archive of experience you have. So I'm just going to jump in. Many of our listeners are new in leadership, and healthcare does a horrible job in, I better watch it lest I be assigned to HR myself like you were. But to be accurately critical, Ernesto, because we have highly educated people in healthcare, people assume that because they have a master's in nursing or they're a surgeon, that they will naturally be good leaders. They're smart, they're well educated, so they'll be a good leader. And so they're put into these leadership positions with absolutely no training in leadership. So what I'd like us to do, just jumping in right away, is my question would be, one of our listeners today is a new leader, and she's probably thinking, wow, I'd love to ask this person, what are my first steps as a new leader? What should I do as a new leader? Maybe I've been in for a couple of months, so I'll turn it to you. What should she do?
When I first started looking into this, HR areas, and as I said, I'm not an HR person, you know, just arrived into the position and kind of learned my way. There is a lot of things that are difficult to understand, sometimes very touchy-feely, things that you say, you know what, I'm a good professional, functional expert. I don't have to get into this, right? And I was like that. But then I realized that in any responsibility that you have in an organization and in healthcare is no different. You are as good as the team you have, and you're going to be evaluated. The performance or your performance is going to be evaluated by the results that you produce, and largely it depends on what the team does. So, if anything, you have to make sure that you have to ask the question, is there a way in which the team could perform better? And try to work your way into what needs to happen for people to achieve their best. In reality, organizations seem to be very complex because they have a lot of departments and communication and processes and stuff like that. But it boils down to individuals and teams. That's at the heart. It's just, how good this individual is and how well this individual can perform in a team. And if you find ways to make the team more productive, then you will achieve your goals and everybody will win. Uh, that's the simplest way to putting this, HR concepts into practice. What culture does in organizations is that it helps you perfect the interactions, how people interact, and how people communicate, and how people achieve goals. And I was always intrigued by, what makes a team really fly, rise and do the best job they could. We all have been at some point or another in teams that perform really well. We are very happy. We achieve results. And I would say, is there a way to kind of find the secret sauce to that magic? And if that's so, can it be replicated, and scaled? And that's why I've been working on and I wrote a book about that, which I published a few months ago, based on my experiences, in organizations and of course in the HR departments. So in a nutshell, that's what I would like to convey to your audience. Think about how you can. I'm going to start by posing a question, and it's going to be a self-reflective, thing. If I were to ask you, Carl, as I've been asking myself, Ernesto, today or for the past, couple of months, are you really delivering at your full potential or not? Do you think you have something in you that you haven't really applied yet? And more often than not, you're going to find that, I'm capable of a lot more. If only I had the chance. If only, I had a team, a boss, a situation where I could really perform. I'm not even at my 50%, potential, redeeming that potential. And that's what I've been looking into. Mostly people operate between 50 and 60% of what they're capable of performing.
Mhm.
The next question is why? Well, the environment and bureaucracy and procedures and stuff like that. And think about this, when you perform at your best, you're also happier. You're not only more productive, but you really enjoy what you do because you're getting to be good at that. And you end up finding that achieved potential is just a goalpost, because once you arrive there, all of a sudden you see there is more to do, because now you know how to do that better. So it's really a moving target. And that, it's kind of philosophical, but that really applies to our daily jobs. And the question is, if that happens to me, if I ask this question to me, then if I were to ask the same question to my team, more than likely they're going to say that, the same. And as a boss, as a leader, it's your responsibility to find ways, to unlock everything these people have.
So I'm thinking of this person driving into work who's been the leader for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and she's listening to us right now talk. And you've mentioned a couple of things that I want to dig in on. Find out what your team does best. And his thought or her thought is, how do I do that? Because I have all these things. I have a budget to meet, I have staffing to make, and staffing's real hard in medical circles right now. I have a boss that really is still kind of thinking she made a mistake because I'm so new. And now Ernesto's telling me that I need to find out about my people. Where do I even start? Help us out there.
Yeah, that's a good question. In many industries, especially in healthcare, all systems are in place to reduce variation, right? You don't want to have variation there. You want to make sure that everything works like clockwork because mistakes are very costly. So there are procedures or systems where, replication and making sure that you meet the KPIs is critical. But there are other areas where your people can probably contribute and give you better ideas on how to do things. Let me kind of put you into what I call the two main models. What you're saying is, I'm new to the position. I need to learn more about how to, you know, unlock people's potential, but I don't know how. Our default system normally is just to apply pressure on the team. You go there and you raise the bar and you scream and yell and say, I'm the boss and this is what you need to do, etc. And that has worked for a while. And sometimes, especially during a crisis, it's required, frankly. And that, applying pressure gets you probably to, 10, 20%, achievement, more potential achieved than the baseline. What happens is that as things get to be more complicated, unpredictable, as we are facing today, applying pressure is not enough. And also, if you do that permanently, you create, resentment in the team. People start, being aware of and say, you know what, I had enough about this, pressure all day long. The counterintuitive thing about locking potential is that you have to go the other way. And you have to get to know your people and connect with them. And that's not really something that leaders are used to do, to get close to their teammates or to their reports, because you think that that's not professional. And you, quite frankly, are the boss for a reason because you're supposed to know more or you have the authority. But you would be surprised if you kind of start opening up conversations with your people and try to see, what are their essential qualities that they may explode and they may kind of nurture so that they can contribute more.
Mhm.
The other thing is that you really have to be mindful about try to not, I don't know how to say this lightly, but you have to manage your ego. Ego, it's a problem. It's healthy up until a time where it's not healthy. So having
Okay.
some, it's okay because that gives you, security, and then you are in control. But if you go beyond the threshold, you get to be an annoyance and a know-it-all. And all of a sudden everybody say, you know what, I cannot say anything to this person because it's just, and there are a lot of things that are not even considered that could really make make the team much better. It's just, I've been writing some LinkedIn posts and things like that, and I use this term. In organizations we have KPIs for everything, and even to the decimal, we control those things. But when it comes to knowing our people, largely, we don't know what they have inside. And how can you unlock potential if not by getting there? So it's not, it's counterintuitive, and it sometimes it's not easy. We have not been trained to do that, but you have to start opening up more and having candid conversations, and try to leave your ego on the side a little bit, and make sure that when people feel that they are heard, even if you end up, taking a different route, they say, well, at least, I had my chance to speak up. Uh, if you look at how the team goes, what you have to do is optimize decision making. You have to make the best decisions, and sometimes with not enough information. And you cannot make the best decisions if you don't have good information. And that information, sometimes it's within you, sometimes it is in the team. So you have to make sure that people feel free to say what they have in mind, and make sure that you hear them all, and then you make your decision, which is fine. You're the leader, you have to make decisions, but not before giving everybody the option to say what they think.
Excellent. A couple of other things here. I want to take a brief tangent. Tell us the title and the intent of your book. It's just been out a couple of months. Talk to
Yeah.
us about the book.
My book's name is Regrowth, actually, and I'm going to explain why I chose that name. And it says, how organizations can overcome stalling by unlocking their people's potential.
Mhm.
If you take a long-term view on organization and on individuals, we are not, going through a 45-degree ascending line all the time. We hit walls, we stall, yeah, we go ups and downs, we sometimes regress. And you have to kind of stop, take two steps back, look into the situation and say, you know what, I need to correct certain things. So it's not so much about how you grow, but about how you regrow once you stall. And believe me, we all stall. All organizations, everybody in certain situations, we know we just hit a wall, and that's normal. So I say, you know what? If that happens, and I've seen that throughout my life, problems are part of our job, and those stalling situations are going to happen regardless. But how can we overcome that? And what I've concluded is that the main restriction is always human. Technology is not really a restriction. The bottleneck, it's always people. You know, the bottleneck comes to, these people didn't do this, or she, complained about that, or he said something, or he was supposed to do something that he did. It's always people, involved. And that soft wiring, you know, it's an intangible, and it's very difficult to manage. And it's very difficult to measure too. So I say, what do you need to achieve that regrowth? So you have to put three dimensions in control. One is talent, the talent density. You have to have talented people to begin with. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. You have to have a suitable, enabling culture so that interactions can happen in a way that produce, results. And this is not, don't take this lightly. Edward Deming, was a guru back in the day with total quality and stuff like that, used to say that a bad system will beat a good person every time. And this is true.
Say that again.
A bad system will beat a good person every time. So you cannot out talent a bad system, because if the system is not really working well, you can be a hero or do many things, but you're gonna hit a wall regardless. So you have to make sure that the incentives are right, the procedures and systems are conducive to what you want to accomplish. So you have to have the right talent. You have to have a way of interacting that allows you to produce results. And then the third element that I propose is mindset, which is what is the mentality that the collective and individual mentality that people need to have in order to overcome, the barriers, because most of the barriers are here in our head, are mental.
So I want to jump on a question. Again, to our viewers, I want you to remember this gentleman ran HR for a 9,083,000 employee company. And yet twice in just a few minutes we've talked, Ernesto, you have mentioned culture 2 times.
Yeah.
And I'm in a situation right now where we're needing to work on the culture in this one unit in a hospital. And I had a very key person say, Carl, this cult, and he used a word I won't. This culture is this is this it's not it has nothing to do with culture. We just need to get our act together and make sure that A, B, and C doesn't happen anymore. And timing's everything, so I let him talk. And again, you've led at multi-billion-dollar levels, and yet you're not talking just KPI here, you're talking culture, which some people look as, could you use a term that is more undefined, warm, fuzzy, turn some people on, turn some people off? Talk to us as much in depth as you want to about what culture is, what it isn't, and why you think it's important or not.
When you get into this, and this is exactly what happened to me when I first arrived to the position, because there are about 200 definitions of culture.
Seriously.
Seriously, yeah, there is a lot, and all of them, have a little bit of a piece of the reality. And also, when I kind of started saying, well, how can I manage culture in the company? I approached several consultants, and they have, sophisticated but very complex systems made out of, 20, 25 elements that you have to manage. And it's really, a lot of work, and sometimes it's difficult to explain. So I say, you know what, I'm going to try to simplify this as much as I can. And I propose there are three determinants of culture. Three. The first one, it's the creed. What the organization stands for. And that kind of is explained by, we have these principles or values or whatever. And this is our aspiration, our purpose. This is what we are meant to do. That you have to take with a grain of salt, because oftentimes it's just wording and that's it. So nobody really, and culture is really what people see happening, not what you say it's going to happen. But you have to start somewhere. Amazon, for instance, has been very successful by establishing a very tight, very specific culture. And I've heard Jeff Bezos talk a lot about this, saying that one of the single reasons why they have been successful is because they put a lot of effort in the talent part, but also in the way people work. And when you get to be complex and you cannot supervise many teams, you have to have rules of engagement so that people can work together. But that's the first thing. Okay, we have to have a creed. And that creed has to be coherent, because sometimes we say we want innovation and we want to create more things, but at the same time we want to fulfill our commitments and get strong results. And you say, well, you know what, but how are you going to experiment? In one thing you ask me to deliver results, predictable results all the time, and then you ask me to experiment, and that doesn't work really well together. So we have to make sure that what you say, it's kind of a logic or coherent. And then you have to analyze the context in which that happens. Companies have, again, to reduce variation, procedures, systems, incentives, they pay bonuses, and they require for you to do certain things. And most of the times, those things that companies establish may be an obstacle for achieving the goals in the creed as well. For instance, let's imagine Walmart is very well known because they have, a low cost model. So you can get the best prices available. If you go to Walmart's Bentonville offices, you will not see fancy headquarters. You don't see, lavished, rooms where you can meet. It's just really something really basic because they think and they breathe that low cost mentality in everything they do. Because otherwise, you cannot expect people to do that. So if you, in one thing, you say, I want to be, frugal, and then you contradict yourself, that doesn't work.
Flying in on the corporate jet with a frugality message isn't going to work, you're saying?
Exactly. So the context, there are many things that you start seeing and observing, and you say, you know what, this guy doesn't, this is not for real. They don't mean this. And then the incentives, because the incentives are there for a reason. They want you to perform in a certain way, and they have to be congruent with, the message that you are doing. But those two things are kind of, where you say you're going to do, and the barriers that may be there in the offices, in the rituals, in the way that people work, that make you think, really? Did they really, ask me to do this? And then the third component for me is I call it the stewardship model, which is culture in action. So how, in reality, are you in your everyday job leading your team in a congruent manner that serves, what you want to accomplish and takes care of the limitations, established by procedures, systems, and stuff like that, so that you really accomplish your goals. And I stated there are different models, but I suggest a model that has 4 parts. Very easy. First, and this is something that your audience can apply immediately to their teams. Do my people have ownership? Are they really committed to do what they say they do? Second, teams are the very basic unit of analysis of performance in any organization. You select individuals, but in the end, they have to work in a team. And we often talk about a lot of individual characteristics and traits of people, but you wonder if they're going to make a good fit in the team. And sometimes you can have excellent people that don't work well in a team, and not so good people that are fantastic in teams. So for a team to work well, people have to have ownership. People have to have a genuine desire to help each other to achieve more. It's not that you have your own agenda and you want all the flashlights for you. It's a team effort. And if you're Michael Jordan and you play in the team, that's what you must do.
And give the example of that you gave to me during our pre-call.
We were saying that, the Chicago Bulls very often arrived to the finals or semifinals. Having Michael Jordan, as the team leader was just fantastic for them. But they didn't win championships. And, the team decided to change the coach. And because they say, you know what, we need to find a different way. And the coach was really shrewd and say, you know what, instead of everybody working for Michael and everybody passing the ball to Michael and see what he can do, why don't we have Michael, with all his abilities, help everyone else get better? And he changed the system in which sometimes Michael would receive the ball and would pass it to this guy who was fantastic with the 3-pointers, remember? And he knew this was a reliable person. And everybody, kind of start working together, even though they had a very strong teammate. And they started winning championships. And oftentimes, sports examples really work well in business situations because in the end, they have rules that apply to our, everyday performance. So you have to have people that genuinely want to work and help each other become better.
Mhm.
The third thing you have to have, it's what I mentioned before. It's you have to balance and make sure that you resolve the tension between ego and truth. So you are there as a leader to get things right, to make the best decisions for the team, not to be right, not to be the person who gets all the accolades because you are right, right? So the difference between getting it right and being right is subtle, but it's important because when you want to get things right, you don't care who contributes. If it was your idea, fine. If it was somebody else's idea, fine. Because yeah, man, I'm gonna get it right. And this is important because leaders think that by being right, they're gonna ascend in their organizations and they're gonna get better jobs. And they're gonna really, become high in the hierarchy. When the truth is, you don't ascend or over people, you are pushed by your team. And in that way, you get to become, that professional that really is promoted. So it's different. It's not you crippling over somebody else to get, a higher job. It's the team pushing you upwards to get the job. So ego over truth works very well. And the fourth one and final, it's something that it's been, even in the health industry has been discussed a lot, which is psychological safety, the ability for people to speak up, and contribute.
So let me just ask a question as you explain this. I see some organizations taking the concept of psychological safety to where we can't be confrontational, we can't pinpoint problems. We have to, I don't want to sound too sarcastic here, but it has to be warm, fuzzy, and protected for it to be psychological safety. Amy Edmondson in the May-June issue of Harvard Business Review this year, 2025, had an excellent article refuting what those misconceptions are. So, as someone who has led tens of thousands of people, define for us what psych safety is and what our goals should be in that area.
First of all, and thank you for asking me this question because you have to be in a sugar-coated environment to have, good psychological safety. And you can be demanding with respect, you know, and really the thing is not that, everybody has whole hands and you're a bit touchy-feely. It's that you want to arrive to the best decision. That's your goal. So for that to happen, people have to feel included. So if you sit in a table, in a room where you're going to have a meeting, and all the bosses sit, in the table, and then the next levels, go back in the room, whatever, they don't feel included. So how can somebody is going to feel like, I can be part of this team if they clearly are putting me aside and not letting me participate? So people have to feel included, and people have to feel that uh, if they say something that it goes against conventionalism, they will not get reprimanded. It's just that, say what you have in mind. And this is a safe space for you to say what you think. It doesn't mean that I'm gonna, you know, acknowledge or recognize or be, in agreement with what you have to say, but you can say it. And most importantly, I think that when push comes to shove, people have to be safe to challenge the status quo and even say, you know what, this is something that is not right. This is something that we should, do differently. And if it's been the way we have been doing things for a long time, doesn't matter. And you can do that in a really normal office environment without sugarcoating anything. So by doing those three things, you get the environment you have. Now, the truth also is that you have to let your team know that in the end, the leader has to make a decision. And even if everybody had a chance to speak and say what they think, you're gonna do what you have to do based on your experience and knowledge and foresight. So, and people have to acknowledge and respect that, because if what I said was not taken into consideration, that's fine. There'll be a next time, and that's it. So you can have a healthy environment, and when ego gets in the way, normally bosses we tend to believe that we have to establish a boundary, and there is a hierarchy that you have to control. Nowadays it really doesn't serve any purpose, and you don't get you really get respect by influencing others, not really by you know establishing that you're better than everybody else.
So as we start wrapping up here, we still got a few minutes. You mentioned in our pre-call about reassessing and recalibrating a situation. And that's just something, in essence, we're talking about problem solving. And it's one of the top skills that I see that people really could benefit from. So, can you teach us on you're in a sticky situation, how you reassess and how you recalibrate?
It's a Let me put it this way, and probably I'm gonna change a little bit the wording so that I can convey the idea. Rarely we go from doing things wrong and in one single step doing things right. You don't jump into being wrong and then being right just in one leap. That doesn't really happen. I still yet to hear a credible example when that happens. What really needs to happen in a situation with a team that you want to improve, you first of all, you have to assess or the willingness of the team to really perform better. I call this the impetus platform. Do they really want to do it or not? And because when people say they want to do something and they don't really want to do it, it's going to be hard. So you have to make sure that the team and you are aligned into what you want to accomplish. The very next step is to break through what is limiting you. Remove what is stalking you. And again, if it's a practice that is not useful anymore, but this doesn't work, if it's something that it was done in the past and now we need to reconsider, we have to kind of write down all the things that are getting you stuck and make sure that you have clarity and start solving the bigger ones because you're going to have a laundry list of things. So what is the one or two main problems that you need to solve and remove the restrictions that they're creating? The other thing is that you have to start imagining, what ifs, what I call the renewal phase. So I need to, break through, and then I have to start renewing and imagining, well, what if I do this? What if I do that? Let's start practicing. And you go, baby steps into that. And kind of make your way into how does it feel and what kind of motivation you get by doing that. And the very last one is when you really unlock potential, because now you start to get really good at this and you take off. So it's kind of a remove. I call this remove, reroute, and regrow. uh,
So,
uh,
one question, because you mentioned it and I loved your wording. In the pre-call, you talked about the high cost of losing human potential. And that can be an emotional statement, but I can't imagine that we could even conceive of what it costs American industry or international industry to, like you mentioned earlier, the average person works at 50 to 60%.
Yeah.
That means that 40%. So if I'm valuable at 50 and 60, what would I be at 80 or 90?
You know,
Talk to us about that a bit.
I've been trying to find, if there is a case study about that, serious. And I've seen some things about, McKinsey and other, and also, all these AI apps. I've been checking on them. And what I've concluded is that in the top line, companies could probably get between 10 and 20% more revenues that they're getting. And in the cost line, hidden, the cost of hidden potential is the largest cost there is right now, which is between 20 and 40% of labor cost. So, you combine those two things, the top line and the cost, and it's huge. You know, we'll always think about, there is AI now that's going to help us, and all this digital, digitization and digital platforms that we can use. That's fine. There is a lot of value to capture. But the bottleneck really is people. Do we have people doing the right things and doing things right? And also, are they empowered to do what they know how to do? Because if they do, all these other tools are going to be at the service. I heard the other day somebody saying that you don't have to be worried about losing your job because of AI. You have to be worried of losing your job to another person that uses AI better than you.
Oh, that's good.
So,
That's
so,
good.
so the truth is the person, right? A person needs to be, everything else is a tool. So you have to work on, and believe me, I know that for the highly functional expert, this touchy-feely conversation may be difficult to digest. But in the end, it happens to us. I mean, think about yourself. The times where you were really performing really well. How does that feel? What kind of results you gave? And the wonder is, if you were to ask your subordinates, you know, you know them very well. If you were to assess where they stand in terms of their potential, what what score would you give them? And you're gonna realize there is a lot of value to capture.
Absolutely. So one last question, Ernesto. As people listen to you today, and want to find out more about regrowth, your services you can offer in your consulting role, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, first of all, I'm in LinkedIn. I go by, in Latin America, we use both, our fathers and mothers' names. So you can find me Ernesto Gomez Arzapalo, Arzapalo, in LinkedIn, and you can just contact me there. You can also visit my website, which is aspenmindset1.com. And in that website, there, you can, contact me as well. And in Amazon and Barnes and Noble in the e-book area, you can also get my book Regrowth. But make sure you write Ernesto Gomez book Regrowth, because the other day I wrote just Regrowth, and it directed into other things like growing hair and stuff like that. So put book Regrowth by Ernesto Gomez, and you can get it there. You can download a digital version or the soft cover or whatever. And I'll be happy to engage with anybody. I mean, I'm passionate about this. I'm doing this because it's a calling, and it would be lovely to be helpful if I could.
Okay, and again, here to our listeners, first of all, thank you for being with us today. But most of all, you've got an international expert, knows how to pivot, knows how to change, and has done it at the very highest levels. And you just heard him say, engage with him. So don't lose out on that opportunity. Truly don't. we don't have all of our guests that are that open to sharing their expertise. Ernesto, you have shared so much with us today. So grateful that you've been able to spend time with us. And what a marvelous offer to offer your whole library of experience to people via LinkedIn or however way they contact you. Thanks for being with us today.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I really look forward to this podcast. I really like what you do, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And again, thanks to our listeners for being with us today.